Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always. I'm looking a little baby facey today, shaved the beard off. And folks, I've been in Buenos Aires for almost a month now, and I can literally see the weight. I've gained a couple lbs, a couple kilos. The food here is electric. I'm still hitting the gym almost every day, but on the weekend we have been having a couple bevies, and the food is just so good, and we're eating way too much of it. So I need to get back on the grind, and next time you guys see me, not next time, but in a couple weeks, hopefully I will have my slim face and a relatively decent jawline, which is now non-existent. But enough about me. I'm not the star of the show. Super pumped to have the one and only Robinson Burkey on the show today, co-founder and CCO at Wormhole Foundation. Obviously, throughout this pod, we are going to just refer to it as Wormhole. Everyone knows Wormhole, and I'm super pumped to get into this. Robinson has an impressive track record spanning nearly a decade and has consistently excelled in leading growth and go-to-market strategies for startups, making a significant impact in the crypto industry since 2021. Before Wormhole, he held a key position at Acala, where he spearheaded biz dev and ecosystem efforts within the Polkadot ecosystem. As CCO of Wormhole, he's dedicated to accelerating the foundation's growth trajectory and fostering the widespread adoption of Wormhole's groundbreaking cross-chain communication protocol. And if I'm a betting man, and I am, he and the team have done a pretty darn good job of that, as they are literally the cross-chain comms behemoth in the space. Robinson, welcome to the show, my friend. Pumped to have you on. How you doing this lovely morning in one of the best places on the planet, South Florida?
I'm doing great. What an intro. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here, excited to chat about Wormhole. And, I actually think, you haven't put on, I've seen the show a few times. I think you look great. I think you still got the jawline. I think,
thanks, man.
We got to give ourselves a little slack around the holidays, but glad you're enjoying yourself there at BA.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I mean, you're a dude with a beard as well. Sometimes it's just like, I like having it, but I don't like the upkeep. I don't know how girls look so good all the time with their upkeep and everything. It's something that I'm not envious of, but I just have so much respect for, the effort they put into it. I wear a hat kind of guy, my hair, if I don't wear a hat, I sort of look like Ronald McDonald, but like you had a great beard too. Are you like every couple days touch it up kind of guy, or do you just sort of go with the flow?
I'm definitely a go with the flow type person. I think, probably like you, I get a little, too focused on my work sometimes. I know that sounds crazy. Like, what do you mean you don't have time to focus on like the upkeep stuff? Every now and then I will, though. Normally on the weekends, I'll get a little extra time and think about it and do whatever I need to do. But yeah, I'm more of go with the flow at this point.
Yeah, 100%. It's just nice going baby face every once in a while. Anyways, this is not a beauty pod. It is a crypto pod, and let's get right into it. Obviously, your past, you worked for a couple great companies, sort of to my knowledge, biz dev, go-to-market strategy, ecosystem growth guy from day one. I feel like you and I are very similar in that regard, but give me the whole sort of story of joining Wormhole. What kind of opportunity was that? What kind of job did you leave for that? And just sort of walk us through, Wormhole's trajectory from 2021 when you joined to present day 2024, almost 2025, where to my knowledge, you guys have an absolutely massive lead on the whole sort of cross-chain comms protocol space.
Yeah, absolutely. I got into crypto in 2017 personally. It was kind of part of that 2017 class where I feel like everyone got in from like mining, as did I. I was mining Ethereum thanks to one of my roommates in Silicon Valley. At the time I was at DoorDash though, and DoorDash was doing quite well. Some could say it was like a rocket ship at the time. Did not want to leave. Eventually, once, that we went public at DoorDash, moved over to the Polkadot ecosystem, because candidly, within the Polkadot ecosystem, they were some of the first really tackling interoperability, right? The story there is Gavin Wood, helped obviously start Ethereum, or co-founded Ethereum with Vitalik, kind of anticipated that it wouldn't scale. This is before all the L2s, right? And it was like, I'm going to create a network that will scale, kind of the sharded network that's connected via interoperability. And so that to me was interesting, because I always felt interoperability was going to be this big problem. Even before, I think a lot of crypto was like, hey, things are going to be multi-chain. I don't know if you remember, but in like 2021, it was not the consensus that things were going to be multi-chain, right? It was actually, an anti-consensus bet. So, once I was there and kind of saw some of the stuff that Polkadot was doing, I enjoyed kind of working and getting my feet wet in that ecosystem, but I really took the time to say, okay, who are some of the players in this space, like the movers and shakers really doing some of the biggest stuff? And that was Jump Crypto at the time. And so I ended up moving over to Jump Crypto. There, we started Wormhole. And the idea at the time was really solving a problem that Jump had. How do we get assets from Ethereum to Solana and vice versa?
Wasn't that it? Wasn't it just a sold ETH bridge back in the day?
It wasn't even messaging at the beginning. It actually
It's
wasn't even
wild.
messaging. It was only an asset transfer between Sol and Ethereum.
Wow.
Yeah. And anyway, once we solved that initial problem, we're essentially we're like, all right, this could have a lot more uses, right? So subsequently after that came more chains. We had a real initial goal of really connecting a lot of chains at first, and also making the messaging component, which is a super important piece we can kind of get into today. But from there, it was kind of like, that was what, 4 years ago. It was kind of a rocket ship, right? We saw a lot of product market fit. We saw a lot of, I think most people are familiar with bridging as Portal, or just bridging in general is the main use case for interoperability, but I can get into later some of the other stuff. But fast forward all the way to now, we spun out our Wormhole Foundation, Wormhole Labs, and some of the other entities, and Wormhole powered asset protocols, give or take the day, is usually number one across the industry for securing and facilitating the most value flow.
That's wild. I mean, just to think, like, Solana, Ethereum back in the day, I didn't use Solana until 2021. Like I didn't even know that was that big of an issue or a problem back then in 2020. Like, if I'm correct, Solana was pretty much like just VC used back in the day. If I'm right, like, was it, well, why tackle that? Why not find another bridge or another point X to point Y, point X to point Z kind of thing? What was the big like issue there?
Well, I think so. Whenever you launch a new chain, you always have this problem, this like cold start problem with liquidity, but also as part of the cold start problem, like how to get liquidity to the chain. You can, of course, try and bootstrap net new liquidity by onboarding from some sort of centralized exchange. But what happens to all the liquidity that's already on chain, right? Like, yeah, people can take it off and go through a centralized exchange. They can create an account, go through KYC, go through these additional steps, or they can just transfer the liquidity over. So what actually happened over the years is we found ourselves as like a strategic launch partner for all these different chains, right? Solana was just the first one because all the liquidity was still on Ethereum. And so like people wanted to keep that liquidity on chain and just bring it over to Solana. And then you saw the same thing with all these other, particularly L1s, like alternative L1s. You see it with Avalanche. You see it with Polygon. Obviously, they have like an Ethereum bridge. You see it with Sui. We were a big part of the Sui launch, Aptos. And I mean, the list goes on now with like Monad, Barachain, et cetera. But that's really where you saw a lot of the like PMF, I would say, is like getting liquidity over day one. And I mean, just looking at the Sui chart over the past year in terms of liquidity inflows, Wormhole's been like a pivotal part of that.
Yeah. Well said there. I want to go back to a point that you mentioned a couple of minutes ago with sort of the two key ethos points of cross-chain comms, not just asset transferability, but also the messaging part. Most people, myself included, don't ever really use the messaging part. The only time I use bridges is to get shit from one chain to another, because without it, it's, pretty much impossible. Can you walk me through the messaging part? What is it? Why it's so important? I don't think we need to explain to listeners what a bridge is. Everyone knows it's literally just a magic portal where you have no freaking clue what's going on. You spit in one coin and you actually get the coin on the other side of the one you want. It's a way to bridge it. It's magic. I still don't even really understand fully how it works, but it's great. Walk me through the messaging part, Robinson. How the heck does that work?
Yeah. So the way I describe Wormhole is messaging is actually kind of the core, most important layer. And if you want to use mental models, if you will, I'll give an analogy and I'll give a mental model. Like, it's almost like if it were to be our L1 and then everything else is built on top of the L1. And so once you have messaging, you can enable a lot of different things. The first thing, and the application, if you will, like think about an L1 and a DEX, a messaging layer and an asset bridge or something, or a bridge, if you will, is like very, very similar. So the first thing you can kind of enable is a bridge. And that's what we've had. I think any interoperability protocol, if you look at them, they always are paired with a bridge, because that's what 95% of the usage of our space is today. Still, it's assets, right? Yeah. Money. How do you get money from one place to another? So when you think about messaging and what really is it, it's a way to is share state, to update in a secure and decentralized way. Ideally, you don't want just one person saying what you burned there, mint there, right? That we've seen, those can be exploited if it's one person. So Wormhole has 19 entities, if you will, that verifies everything that going from chain to chain. And I think a good example is Swift, or maybe just like a wire transfer, right? It's very similar to saying I have this much money here. I'm going to send this much money here. And then there's like a messaging protocol that the banking systems adhere to be able to update the banking ledgers. You can kind of think and use that analogy a little bit, especially when it comes to asset bridging. So Wormhole has what I would say is the most secure messaging protocol in the space. And so what we've done is we've built a bunch of asset like apps on top of it. So intents, applications, NTT, which we'll get into, lock and mint bridges, burn and mint bridges. We put all of that in an SDK, like a software development kit, and we can give it to developers to put in their front end. Or you could just use Portal, which is, probably one of the more popular front ends that people are used to, which has gotten a lot better over the past year. We've been focused a lot on UX. But I think what's interesting is I believe, I should say, that over like at least the next couple of years, asset use cases are still everything we really should focus on, like how to get any asset to go from point A to point B without the user really knowing. But the actual messaging layer has a lot of additional things it can provide. And to your point, you're like, I don't really see it or use the messaging layer. And I think that's the interesting part about it is like, it powers so much, but people really don't know. It's almost similar to like TCP/IP. You just use the applications on your browser. You don't think about all the data fetching that happens in the background. Wormhole is facilitating a lot of that data fetching, right? Like we work with Infinex, Uniswap, Curvance, Synthetics, like all these applications in different ways where messaging is used to like verify data on different chains. I'll give one like crystallizing example is World ID. So World ID by WorldCoin is effectively on Ethereum, but there's like a state root on Ethereum where everyone's like, eyeball essentially is matched to an ID, but they want applications and users to be able to use it on Solana, but they want to make sure it's, shared in a secure and decentralized way. So Wormhole has the messaging protocol can effectively make sure that this lives on Ethereum, but you can also use it on Solana. And so now World ID can be used across all chains, not just on Ethereum. I think that's a good example. And Oracle's use it as well. Pyth is actually native to Solana. They have a side chain, and Pyth is the second largest Oracle, I would say, quickly eating a lot of Chainlink's lunch. And they expand to every chain with Wormhole. I think there are 60 plus
That's
chains.
Wild.
Yeah.
That's insane. Wow. What a nice little riff there. So many ways we can take this.
Yeah.
NTT, I think that's something that sort of blew me away. Yeah. It was pretty freaking cool reading about this. Again, something that is used all over the place that I just don't know. Like you guys have so much really cool, super powerful, useful, efficient backend tech that the front end user like me never sees when I'm just bridging, shit from blockchain 1 to blockchain 2. It's just like, I'm just pressing a couple buttons, praying that it shows up on the other side. Meanwhile, I've literally next to no clue what's going on in the back end. Obviously, I got a little bit of a clue, but you know what I mean. NTT, native token transfer, literally advances the entirety of the digital asset ecosystem, more interoperable, more collaborative. Tell me all about that, because this is pretty darn cool and can really make some waves moving forward.
Yeah, I could riff about this for a while, but I think stating the problem is helpful first. So if you've been using things on chain or, using DeFi for the past, even if you've been 2 years, right? Even if you go a year back, and sometimes you can still find it today in the Cosmos ecosystem, it's pretty prevalent, but liquidity fragmentation is a real problem. That's like a loaded phrase. So like, let's unpack it a little bit. It's the idea that I kind of boil it down to, there are multiple versions of what should be the same asset. So you fragment what should be, a single pool or single asset of liquidity into multiple. We worked with Circle early on the CCTP design, which was essentially inspired to solve this problem. And I think there's some famous tweets. I think Georgios from Paradigm is one of them that shows a wallet with like 4 or 5 different USDCs. And you'll see this even on like Base. They have a lot of different ETHs, right? And the reason why you have that is because you need to have a different asset for a different mint contract. So meaning if it comes from the native bridge, so let's do a thought exercise like Ethereum to Base, that is one type of ETH, because you have to understand the path in which the ETH got there. It got there from being native to Ethereum mainnet, and then used this bridge, the native bridge, got to Base. But then
still in the ecosystem though, not a completely different ecosystem.
Yeah. But what also could happen is you could go from ETH to Arbitrum, and then that Arbitrum, that ETH that goes to Base, is completely different, right?
Ah,
So now you have two different ETHs.
gotcha.
And so what happens is like, if I'm a DEX, it quickly cascades to the whole ecosystem. If I'm a DEX, which ETH do I prioritize building liquidity for? And if I can't figure out which one to prioritize building liquidity for, I'm going to have, really, not deep liquidity pools, which is going to give the user a bad experience, right? And so this quickly magnifies and compounds. And we've seen so many chains launch and see these problems occur. I think the quickest way that it kind of was solved in the past 2 years is you kind of say, hey, this is the one we're going to do, right? We're going to use this one. For instance, SUI, ETH cannot exist. ETH is a mutable token. It cannot exist on other chains without a lock and mint bridge. SUI's like, we're going to choose Wormhole wrapped ETH. They also said the same thing about USDC before they got native USDC, right? And that way they can build a ton of liquidity, which it worked around those two, but then you have to actively not choose the others. So that's kind of the problem that we've seen over the past 2 years. What NTT is, and I'll try and summarize this because I know I can get deep on these things. NTT is a way to say, okay, here are one set of burn and mint contracts, but you can put a bunch of bridges in between them, right? So like you can add additional verification. So remember what I said earlier about messaging is like the way to share state, what happens between two chains. The more providers you can add, technically the more secure it is.
Right, of course.
So you could say the native bridge and Wormhole's guardians, and then you have two mint and burn contracts. Both of those mint on the same one. So you're not minting two separate tokens. And I think, we built this, and I can, I'm happy to get deeper, but just for the sake of brevity, like we built this understanding what Circle's problem was and understanding what we thought the future-proof solution would be. And I think the response we've seen is reflective of that. And especially because we didn't make it so there's vendor lock-in. Technically, you don't have to use Wormhole if you want to use NTT. You can swap it out entirely. And so, that's why we've seen pickup from USDS, formerly DAI, Jito Sol, Wrap State to ETH. The list goes on, M0, AUSD, because they realize like, oh, this is a future-proof. I own the contracts. We're not going to have liquidity fragmentation. Sure, I'm going to use Wormhole because it's the most secure, but we're not locked into it. And so we're going to start to see this healthier DeFi ecosystem because all these new tokens or even like older tokens that had to deal with this can adopt this standard and have one version, but multiple bridges securing them across all these different chains.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. That's a lot to take in, but that is it's a little tough to understand, but I get it. Yeah, it's like unless you're in the space, like from someone who's on the sidelines, you don't give a shit about the liquidity fragmentation problem, but like when you're actually in it and you're building and trying to raise funds or trying to prove that your chain and your ecosystem is worth more than your competitors or whatever the case may be, like FDV is one of the most important metrics in all of crypto. Like it really truly does matter. The higher your FDV, the more trust you have. Heck, the more interoperability because more chains are going to want to work with you, partner with you. Like it's truly one of the most powerful metrics. And it really only matters if you're on the outside, like who gives a shit, unless you're an investor. But then again, you're still sort of on the inside. It's a bit of a weird one,
Yeah. And I think, our job is to solve all of like those annoying little nuances that come with things on chain so that, to your point, like users don't give a shit until they have to give a shit, until they're like, what is this wrapped token from, Polygon while I'm on Arbitrum? And they're like, how do I use this? Right? Like we, for the past couple of years, have been dealing with those problems. And like, this is our reaction to like, okay, we understand that the problem space really intimately. And I just view our job as solving all of those. So like those kind of like famous tweet grabs or like, how can we possibly onboard people when this is the experience? Like I have a passion about fixing those things. And ultimately, if we can be this provider, to your point, if someone launches a new chain, let's just say a Monad or a Barachain, they've done a good job securing high FDVs, but other chains, they can say, hey, we are partnering with X, Y, and Z team, ideally Wormhole, and they're going to solve a lot of these problems for us, which could help them secure, a better go-to-market and a larger valuation.
Super well said there. Robinson, you're on a roll, my friend, but we do need to take a quick break. Give a huge shout out to our sponsor of the show. When we get back, we're going to keep buzzing on everything Wormhole related, talk about some plans for 2025, and talk about Wormhole's impact on the stablecoin ecosystem. Again, one of the big leaders, and I do have a bit of a stablecoin boner, as I believe they are probably the most powerful use case in crypto at the moment, them and centralized exchanges. But until then, huge shout out to Prime XPT, longtime sponsors and longtime friends of the Crypto News podcast. We love them as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. They are also hooking everyone up with a sweet promo code. Use the promo code CryptoNews50. That is CryptoNews50 to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Again, that is CryptoNews50, all in word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Robinson. Let's jump into stablecoins. I love stablecoins. I've even seen some of the true power of stablecoins with people in Argentina. I'm down here with a couple buddies. One of them ran out of Zins and he needed to snag some Zins down in Argentina. So he went on Reddit, went on Facebook, went on all the groups, found a dude. What's the only thing he took? He's like, oh, I only take Tether US dollars. US dollars are an absolute commodity here. So how did he pay him? He paid him in Tether. It's pretty much free Zins. That's absolutely electric. Back home in Toronto, where I'm from, no one uses Tether unless it's a friend who's a crypto degen like us. I can't remember the last time I've sent Tether or any type of crypto to a normie. I think the two biggest use cases present day for crypto are centralized exchanges as they onboard millions and millions and hopefully billions to the space, and stablecoins. You need them. Crypto's too volatile. I don't need to go into it. But your guys' impact on stablecoins, literally partnering with every friggin' stablecoin company in the market, which sort of goes back to your ethos, your narrative, your end goal. Just create that multi-chain world. How important are stablecoins to the market? And I'd love if you could tell us a little bit about the incredible work that you guys do with literally almost every stablecoin company known to mankind.
Yeah, stablecoins are critical. I'll say I will agree with you. And this came from, this personal. I also agree that stablecoins are one of the killer use cases. That's not necessarily a hot take at this point, but they really are. And I think to give an additional example to what you mentioned on top of your Zin purchase example, which I love. So Wormhole has a lot of contributors. We have over 100 people that work full time on Wormhole every day. And one of the core contributing groups is called X Labs. They actually run Portal, which is, obviously really pivotal to Wormhole. And they have a number of developers in Argentina. And I'm pretty sure every single one of them opts into receiving stablecoins over the fiat currency of the country.
100%.
Which is, pretty telling, right? Like, if you're going to get your salary in something, that should be the bar for trust in terms of which one you trust, right?
Yes.
So I think that's interesting. And funny enough, this past year, big conference circuit year, I think a lot of people felt we were kind of leading into the bull market and prioritized it. But I was in Singapore, and this is kind of like a more developed country example. My credit card, I just had one of those things where I was hopping countries too much and it blocked me. I was using Grab. I mean, I could have just called them. It's not that big of a deal, but I was using Grab, which is like the Uber equivalent there. And I saw they had a USDC option, and I hooked up my wallet and, paid in USDC the entire time for Ubers or Grabs. I loved it. It was so cool. So, I think we're seeing them more and more. And to your point, you're saying Canada, I'm often in the US or Portugal. We're not seeing it quite yet there, but the one thing is that, stablecoins are one of the largest holders of US debt as well, right? It actually helps the US maintain its foreign reserve currency status because it's making all these other people who adopt these, further adopt the US dollar in a way, right? And so, long story short, we are very bullish on stablecoins. I would say I am, and then Wormhole by extension. And they're the perfect, and we talked a little bit about NTT, they're the perfect customer for it. They're newly issued assets. We saw what happened with Circle. We saw it if you were, again, in DeFi, you saw all the different versions of USDC. Now we have an opportunity with this new wave of stablecoins to do it differently, and we are, right? And so you're able to go to all these different chains with these stablecoins. AUSD is a really exciting one. Agora, Nick, the CEO there, is great. M0 is like MakerDAO, but completely immutable, decentralized, etc. Now you've got USDS really making a strong comeback. All of these stablecoins, They can have just one on all these chains, which is huge because you don't have all these liquidity fragmentation problems we talked about. And I think a good maybe a tactical example for the audience is just 2 weeks ago, I think it is, we worked with the Maker team or the Sky team now to expand to Solana. And in, I don't know, 24 hours, there was 60 plus million bridge to Solana. So we're seeing demand for stablecoins across all these ecosystems and using specifically NTT. And again, the user doesn't see NTT. All the user sees is one front end. They can bridge between all these different chains, but they're only ever going to deal with one type of asset. They're not going to have 4 USDSs on Solana. So we're seeing a lot of product market fit for this product. I think we're going to continue to see more stable coins, continue to see more of them adopt it. So we're ready, we're excited, and I'm bullish on stable coins as well.
I love that. I mean, we are getting a little tight for time here. A couple more things on Wormhole, and then we'll get into some fun, wild crypto stuff. And there's been so many of it. Any new partnerships, any news? I mean, by the time this episode airs, it's going to be mid-December 2024. Any big plans, Robinson, for 2025 that you and the team are looking forward to?
Yeah, I would say, not to, again, to be too long-winded, but our goal is going to be to continue to be the top of the leaderboard in terms of securing the most and facilitating the most value between all the chains. So we're going to be the leader in intents. We're going to be the leader in chain abstraction. We're going for it all. We're vertically integrating it, and everything is going to enter the wormhole. That is our stance. We'll see some unbundling within the stack, but we're going for the entire interop stack, and we're just going to continue on our current plan. And so I think it'll be a lot of asset protocol related stuff. However, we're really making a big push into institutions, and we happen to start with the biggest one, which is Securitize and by extension BlackRock. And I think why that's important, and we've talked about this a lot, but in the past, we've kind of said the institutions are coming, the institutions are coming. We said it in 2017, 2021. They're here now, and it's not like they're here. I talked with them last week, and they've got plans. Here's the announcement. Here's the proof of concept. There is capital on chain moving between chains. I can send you the Explorer links right now, right? Biddle is on chain. I think there's 500 million.
Yep.
There probably is more going to come, and it's moving between 6 or 7 different chains, secured by Wormhole, right? And Securitize, is working with all these other large funds like KKR, Hamilton Lane, that will also and are also issuing assets on chain. That is going to be a massive source of capital coming on chain. And it is the main difference. And so we're really leaning into that, making sure that Wormhole's the leader there when it comes to institutions, and specifically not the leader on announcements, on the leader on action, because that's what's important to the team. So
love that.
That is probably what I would say are our 2 overarching focuses, especially as we move into 2025.
One thing that I forgot to ask, the name. I think you guys have one of the most electric names in the whole space. A lot of names, and no offense to 99% of people in space, but like most names don't make sense. Like, it's a cool name, they got a sick logo, some cool swag, but like, what the fuck does it mean? Like, your guys' name actually makes sense, which is rare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Walk me through that whole process. Were you there? Were you part of it? Whose idea was it? Like, were there any other maybe stupid names or funny names that had a chance at being picked out of the hat? Walk me through the whole naming and inception process.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of we name a lot of products in crypto, and it's like no one's really product marketers. So like, they're very much so hit and miss. I agree. Like, not only are you naming the company, but then you're naming like the products within your product stack, and you're like, some of them are just so confusing. We actually found that Wormhole is such a good name. We can just name the product exactly what it is. It's almost like Apple Watch, not to compare ourselves to Apple, but Apple Watch, Apple MacBook, Apple headphones. Like, it's like Wormhole Intents, Wormhole Messaging, Wormhole.
Yeah.
Like that's like our product naming convention. And then originally at Jump there were 3 developers, and it was Certus One was the developer group, and they were the ones who came up with the initial proof of concept. And then as we expanded to the messaging part, where we're like, hey, let's do messaging, expand to other chains, Wormhole just made obvious sense. To your point, it's like you put something on one side, it goes in, and it kind of comes out the other. Yeah. and also it was like, kind of, now we explain it a lot more and help people understand, but it was back then, it's kind of like this technical magic. Like, you really didn't know, you just knew your asset would appear on the other side. So it fit really well. But I do agree, naming is always funny in this space. Sometimes there are really good ones though, and you're impressed. And the other thing is, we're really obsessed with a few like categories, which I find funny. We're obsessed with like there's a lot of like Greek mythology related stuff, and there's a lot of space related stuff. I feel like everything is like derivative off of those things. Of course, we like our animals too, but those are more the meme coins.
I love it. Look, well, and anything else before we get into some wild, fun shit?
No, let's get into the wild, fun stuff. I think our goal is to continue to provide the best experience for developers and users and win at the end of the day by delivering the best experience.
Absolutely love it. One of the things that has been catching a lot of my attention is these AI bots on X. How quickly these get spun up, how powerful they are. I mean, I don't know if you've seen AI XBT. Like, this thing is like not just the efficiency and the accuracy of what I mean, I don't even know what to call this thing, what it is saying, but like how it says it in sort of the finance lingo verbiage plus crypto degen. Like, it's just like, how the hell is that? Like, what kind of simulation are we living in? This absolutely blows my mind. And then last night, you and I are recording on Tuesday, December 3rd. It whipped out its own bot called Chaos. Someone, I guess, got past sort of the black wall, and obviously it's not supposed to launch its own coin, but it launched its own coin now. This is absolute mayhem. Like, what do you think of all this crypto AI bots? And do you think that it is going to be the next sort of meme-esque meta, you know? Because that's what everyone's saying right now.
I think it's a meme-esque meta already, kind
of.
It
is, yeah.
The thing I will say is I wish I had more time to pay attention. Like, I'm familiar with all this. I also saw some of the threads with Chaos, but the thing is like, and not to be the whole, like, we're building so much I don't have time to pay attention. There's so much stuff that happens so fast that it is really difficult to pay attention to like every little thing and always stay up to date. The one thing though I will say is that I do think it's already it's just an extension of almost like the meme coin meta a little bit.
Yeah.
It with the same like motion for users, right? Like just participating in this like casino dopamine-esque experience, which I don't think is bad, by the way. A lot of people like demonize this, but what I do think is super interesting, and to tie it back to Wormhole, I guess, a little bit, is that all of these meme coins are going multi-chain with Wormhole. Like, I sometimes talk to the team and I'm like, Wormhole has the barbell approach. It's like we get all the big institutions and big important tokens. All the meme coins use us. It's crazy. Yeah. Like, Bonk obviously is like a legendary meme coin at this point, but like, you have SPX, you have MAGA. I think maybe Mog is or will potentially. Same with the Mudang team. But if you go on Dex Creator and type in Wormhole, you can just see all of the ones, because a lot of the activities between Solana and Base, so they're just going back and forth between those. And so Wormhole's like, I tweeted this the other day, it's almost like this Suez Canal or Panama Canal for meme coins, because it's crazy. So look, I'm all for it, because, you know, it's good for business, I guess you could say. But I think we'll continue to see it. Where the most ironic and weirdest outcomes, especially in this space, are the most likely.
Exactly, the classic Elon quote. Bitcoin. I'm not going to get into price predictions and all that stuff, but obviously Bitcoin has gone parabolic post the Trump big dub, huge dub there for all of us. Again, especially with so many single issue voters in the space. Do you think him and the team will actually whip up and start this sort of USA Bitcoin reserve? Because like, if that happens, I don't see how the tot doesn't absolutely pop off, and the train it's like the train turns into a shitty North American 100-kilometer train to a 800-kilometer-per-hour Asian train in literally, you know, a flick of a switch. What do you think's going to happen there?
Yeah, look, I think there was a good quote about that. I think it was Peter Thiel that said, "Don't take Trump seriously, but not literally." I think it was, and you know, I think that's pretty true, right? Like, he loves hyperbole, loves exaggeration, things like that. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to follow through in some aspect. And this is why I said that quote first, in some aspect around crypto, right? Will it be this like, you know, we're just, you know, in some of his interviews, he doesn't exactly, you know, say things maybe the correct way in terms of how crypto would work. He's like, we'll buy a little Bitcoin and we'll pay off the national debt. But I think there's a lot to be said about building a strategic Bitcoin reserve. You know, we can't necessarily predict price over time, but if you use historicals, like in you know, the US starting to build up a reserve of that, it potentially could actually help eat away at some of this national debt. I do know that's a big focus for the administration and also a lot of people that voted for them. And so if there's a way that crypto could help with that, I don't see why not. I don't see why they wouldn't do it. You know, so I would say, like, overall, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think sometimes it's, I'm in the space. I want to think that he's just going to go ham on absolutely everything. I mean, he's already kind of showing some of that, right? Like Gary Gensler's, leaving office, which is a big kind of show of faith. It's no sign there that he was very predatory when it came to crypto. So I think we're seeing all the right signals. I think if I were to think about incentives for the administration, it makes sense, right? Like, how do we fix the debt, or what are some levers in which we can do that? Oh, this is one. Also knowing that, if the US doubles down on Bitcoin, price will likely go up. And then think about this. If the US says, hey, we're going to feel comfortable about adopting Bitcoin, the other countries aren't going to want to be sidelined, because it's going to be an edge for the US, right? Like,
100%.
So you're going to see China potentially change its stance on it. You're going to see these other big countries, and that's just going to help price at the end of the day. So to me, it seems like a very winning situation. But again, I'm always cautiously optimistic because I'm in the echo chamber and like, of course, this is the path. You guys just do this.
I know. You and I are in the same boat. Robinson, what an episode. This was too much fun, dude. We got to have you on for round 2 as well. But before you go, can you please let our listeners know where they can find you personally, of course, and Wormhole online and on socials?
Yeah, absolutely. Wormhole, just Wormhole on Twitter, Wormhole on YouTube, wormhole.com. It's easy. And then myself is just my full name, Robinson Burkey. I do tweet a lot about Wormhole. So if you're interested in following along on interoperability, I would say mostly, and then Wormhole, and then, trending topics, I'm sometimes tweeting too much, or Xing, if you will, Xing. But yeah,
still tweeting.
Still tweeting. Any of those channels. But yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
This was an absolute blast, dude. Guys, as always, what an episode. Robinson just absolutely brought the heat. This was too much fun and learned a shit ton. As always, everything on bridges, the liquidity fragmentation problem, cross-chain communications, Wormhole's history as well, getting started back in the day, starting with just the Solana to ETH bridge, and now connecting over 30 blockchains and being the big leader in the space. Also, a huge shout out to Wormhole for connecting with the big bad biddle that is BlackRock. Absolutely massive news there, and always they're going to have a shit ton of news coming out over the next couple weeks, months, and years. Huge shout out to Robinson and the team for making this happen. If you guys enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe to my editing team. Love you guys. Thank you for everything. And back to the listeners, if you enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe and keep on growing those bags. Keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Love you guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Ciao.